Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Wet Work Podcast presented by Fish Like Hell. We haven't been canceled or suicided yet, so I guess that's good. So we'll keep chugging along here. We're pretty excited for some stuff we have coming up soon. But today we have a special guest. He was actually a good friend of Alex when he lived out in Arizona, and he has a really interesting job. He's a property manager, but not the typical property manager you would think of. He actually runs ranches. So today we're going to talk about fishing and hunting and life on the ranch, maybe some other stuff. So I'd like to welcome Zach to the podcast, Mr. Zach Tamburello, or as I like to call him, Zach Tamburello for the musical fans out there. Welcome, Zach. Thanks for being on.
Hey, Bryce, thanks for having me. Actually, I go by executive outcomes now, so little dig at administrative results, but that's all right.
I did see that one episode he did with like the face reveal. I never watched his channel, but yeah, I saw that. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean he's pretty Zoomer humor, He's all over the place. I feel like I get ADHD when I watch his stuff, but that doesn't mean it's not entertaining.
Yeah, I try to watch some stuff on YouTube, but I don't have a whole lot of time on my hands. So, I'll watch a Grand Thumb video every once in a while. As my buddy that works at Classic Firearms, I got to watch his videos that they post and watch the CF podcast. So, shout out to them. But what's going on with you? What have you been up to?
Oh man, busy. I just got back from Washington on Monday. Went up there for a wedding. Had my dad's birthday and just hung out with some family, man. It was nice, relaxing time, just hanging out with everybody and catching up. And so, airport travel still sucks. So,
Yeah, I have a rule, we're in Florida, so if it's past like Austin, Texas to I don't know, just south of Chicago, Missouri area, I will drive. So anymore, it just seems like I have the worst luck at airports, so I'll just drive. We went to DC a couple months ago. I drove straight through, left at 10 p.m. our time, and got there at like 3 p.m. the next day. So that was fun.
yeah, every summer I get to do. I call it the Iron Ass 3000 because you got to have a butt made of steel to do it.
Yeah.
It's 1,500 miles all the way up to Washington, and then turn around immediately the next day and drive the 1,500 miles back to Arizona. It's a hell of a drive. Kind of scenic, kind of not. It's boring. It's flat. You go through Idaho, northern Nevada. Then once you kind of get it back up into Oregon, it kind of starts getting beautiful again. But it's boring. It's a long haul.
I want to go to Idaho. I feel like that's one of the most underrated states in the union. I want to go out there and check it out and see. Have you spent much time there or just driving through?
Just driving through. The only places I've really stopped and checked out were Twin Falls, Boise, Meridian, that type of area. In Boise, I want to cruise on up to like Coeur d'Alene and all that. Especially being from Washington, it's weird. I've never been to Coeur d'Alene.
I don't even know where that is. So
That's kind of right on the border between Idaho and Washington.
fair enough. Fair enough. Now we'll get to the ranch a little bit later, but you were born in Washington, if I
Yep.
am okay. So you
Yep.
grew up in Washington State. What was that like? Was it rainy all the time? Was it
So
like
yeah, everybody likes to crap on the Pacific Northwest with constant rain. But from about that October, November, and October, I mean late October, November to April-ish, beginning of April. Actually, it depends. This year, I heard it was kind of a wet spring, lasting all the way up until June. Last summer when I was up there on a big work project for a few months, I didn't have any rain at all beginning from May until I left in October. It was actually kind of weird. Maybe had one day of rain, but other than that, constant sunshine. It was beautiful. It's kind of the only reason I would probably ever move back is just the summertime.
I've heard it's beautiful, politics aside. from
Yeah.
that region. But you grew up there. What were your hobbies growing up? Did you do any fishing? I know you'd mentioned one time, going after salmon, stuff like that up in Alaska. Your dad was going to do that. What was fishing like growing up there?
So unfortunately, I've never gone up to Alaska yet. I really want to. My dad and my nephew are taking a trip up there in just actually a couple weeks. Middle of July, they're heading up, and they're going to go fish for some salmon. I think they're going to Kenai. They're going to do some open water fishing on a charter. Um, but I'm super jealous. I know, like when I was growing up, I lived on an island and we had a boat and we would go out and just kind of go around in all the different sounds and the harbors. And our favorite place to go catch salmon was actually at the mouth where the Puyallup would dump into the Puget Sound. And that was actually some really good fishing down by the Narrows Bridge in Gig Harbor was also some good fishing. Um, but we also had bank fishing. We'd go fish the Hump Tulips, Green River, a bunch of other just smaller rivers throughout the kind of Seattle-ish metro area. Was also some really fun memories when I was a child. Hunting, there was elk hunting, deer hunting. We can hunt on the island for deer. It was actually really cool. Just kind of walking out of your house, going outside, seeing deer, and you could just plug one and take it home, skin it, take it to the meat cutter. It was actually really interesting.
Sounds like you had a pretty captive audience there.
Yeah, no, not really. Just me, myself, and I.
Well, as far as the deer just being on the island, but what kind of tackle, what kind of gear did you use to go after the salmon? There's not halibut because those are a little bit further north, right?
Yeah, so your halibut are going to be more towards, that super high western part of Canada, Alaska, from what I know. Um, but beyond boat fishing, I know we would use some flashers and we'd use live bait, just little fish on the end of the hooks and flashers, and we'd use some downriggers to set our hooks down to about 8, whatever depth. We'd have a fish finder on the boat, and we'd drop our stuff down with the downriggers, and I think they had 10-pound balls on them. So they might not be that; they might be 5-pound. Uh, but that's kind of what I really remember when I was a kid going out and fishing. Was on the boat more than bank fishing. My bank fishing, I couldn't really tell you what we were using.
Yeah. Do you ever do any fly fishing out there, or is it just spinners, bait casters, open face? What kind of?
So I've never ever fly fished before in my life, and I really, really want to.
We'll have to change that. We have someone coming on pretty soon that's a fly fishing expert. I'm really excited for that. But yeah.
I've always wanted to learn the art. Because it's not even like you're going out fishing; it's just a form of artistry.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
learn exactly how to land it, how to pull it back. It's just an art form.
It is an art form and it's a lifestyle. And I mean, I think all fishermen should at least try it once because it's a different just a it gives you a different point of view on fishing and conservation and just being one with the water. I mean, last time I finally got to cross off my bucket list. We went out to Utah earlier this year and I finally got to go out and fly fish in the rivers. I caught one brown trout and then yeah, I was ready to get my hands in the heated gloves and the warm boots after that, but that was something else. So I picture whenever you see people fishing like in that region, it's like always foggy and you can see the bank, but it's mountains. So is it like always overcast and foggy when you're out there fishing? Like what was the temperatures as far as fishing goes out there?
I mean, it would depend really. Salmon season's kind of summertime, so it's not super terrible. But if you get out on the water, if or 0400 or something, you're probably in the 40s to like 50s still. But it's the Northwest, it's on the coast, it's humid, so you still got that little bit of chill factor that happens with the humidity.
Yeah.
So you're wearing a jacket, kind of a thicker, and then you're peeling that off and putting a lighter jacket on. Mid morning, noon, you're kind of back into like a t-shirt. Um, it actually warms up pretty quick up there. Once that overcast burns off by about 11 to noon, you're back in the sunshine. It's starting to get hot. I mean, when I was just up there, we had my dad's party on Saturday, and it was cloudy, overcast, and chilly all morning until about 11 o'clock. It all burned off, and I think by noon we were back in the 70s, and it started to just get toasty.
Hmm. And then as far as the seasons go out there, how does hunting season but up to fishing season? What are your hunting seasons and fishing seasons in Washington like? How's that break down?
Yeah, so I only fish for salmon. I've never fished for anything else up there. But July, and I'm not exactly sure when it ends up there, but we would always go out mid-July, end of July to go out and fish for salmon. Um, Once that season ended, we had to wait until about October, November, probably, to go out and hunt elk up in the. We would go up to what's called Bald Mountain. I can't remember the town that it's near. But we would go up there and hunt, and big, huge family group would go out hunting. So what's actually cool is that Washington has just a straight, you can go in anywhere, buy a tag to go hunt spikes only. Here in Arizona, you have to put in for a draw system to get drawn for elk.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only downside of that. You can't just go kind of buy a tag, go out and hunt, party, camp, for a week. Here you have to actually get lucky and get drawn. So that's the only downside between the Arizona system of elk hunting and back up there. Deer was the same way. You could go and just pull a tag over the counter for deer and just go out and hunt.
Nice. So how were the environmental, the environmental, differences between hunting out there in Washington state and hunting where you are? We can't go into too much detail, but we'll say you're in somewhere in northern Arizona. What was the difference in like the topography there versus Washington, and which one do you think is easier as far as, backpacking in, backpacking out? Which do you prefer?
So Washington, they're kind of, I wouldn't even really say, I would say topography, but um, Washington has a lot more undergrowth in the forests than where I live in northern Arizona. You have blackberries, you have ferns, you have different types of grasses, you have shrubs, um, creating a just super thick undergrowth throughout the forest. Where I live in northern Arizona, we don't really have that. We just kind of have pine trees, and then we have oak and smaller pinyon pine and juniper. But the juniper is kind of more in like that middle high country. Up where I live, it's mostly pine and oak. The oak where it grows can make it more dense, but for the most part, 90% is just pine. So it's just pine tree after pine tree. To answer the question of whether which one would be more easy to navigate and backpack in, I'm going to probably go with where I live in northern Arizona. There's just a ton more trails that are out there for vehicles, bikes, side by sides, hiking trails. All of them are properly well marked. A lot of them are actually on your Google or Apple Maps nowadays.
Hmm.
Onyx is another good company that prioritizes hunting trails and where exactly to park. It shows you units, it shows you private property on the app. If you're hunting near or around private property, same thing on the Onyx app. A lot of the stuff is kind of more updated with today's day and age and the roads and the markers. So, but I would say northern Arizona is easily probably one of the best places to get around if you're more outdoorsy, just because of the amount of trail system and everything's marked, and you could go up to the forest station and get free maps. Everything's just so much easier here.
Yeah, and that's one thing Alex was talking about in the last podcast is, having a way to tell where, Indian reservations are or private property is. And then out there, you can actually use the public land for public use. I mean, you can ride out there, you can, shoot as long as you're doing it safely. I mean, you can't hunt outside of season, but you can actually go out and enjoy the nature. Here in Florida, I mean, if you go down the wrong dirt path in a management area, you're going to be getting lit up and stopped and told to turn around. But out there, you can actually just go. So, is that the same in Washington, or are they kind of different as far as just the woods out there and the public use land?
So actually there's been some like new legislation that has been happening in the state of Washington that's really affecting like the side by side and off-roading community. They're starting to close down a lot of the roads and trails that a lot of people would use for decades. So now if you kind of live within the Seattle metro area, you got to drive over 2 hours just to go somewhere that has trails to go ride your side by side,
Hmm.
where you could have something around your house that was open to the public, but now they closed it due to environmental reasons. But it's not really even environmental. It's they don't want people out there having fun. They're trying to limit, um, exhaust gases. They're trying to tax people for side by sides up there. It's just becoming a hassle for anybody to really kind of have a hobby.
Now, the cool thing in Arizona is you can ride side by sides on the road, right? Like you can register it, or do you have to register it? What's that like? Because I've seen them out
Oh,
there.
so down here, you can register them wherever it's legal. It has to be, I would say majority of the cities in Arizona legalize side by sides on the roads. So all you have to do is just go to the DMV, register it through the DMV, and then you have to go through the Arizona Game and Fish Department and register it through them to get your off-road tags. And then once you get that secured, you can go off-road, on-road, and anywhere. And
Yeah,
then you also have to have it insured through your insurance agent.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I got some Snapchats from Alex last time he visited you. You were driving around town in a side by side, and I'm like, well, I wish I was out there. I do. Well, I guess we can fish in Florida. We do have that going for us. So we can
You have
fish.
better fishing than here. I
Yeah, I guess that's one thing to consider, but I mean,
mean, being a
yeah,
landlocked state, we really don't have the best fishing.
yeah, I mean, as far as where you can go, I mean, Lake Pleasant down in the valley, which I don't think it really has fish in it. I mean, that's a man-made reservoir more than anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, it is man-made. I really don't know if they stock it or not.
Yeah, Lake Pleasant, Lake, is it Powell to the north?
Powell's up by Page, and then you got Havasu.
Yeah,
Then you got some smaller lakes throughout the entire state. But Havasu and Powell would probably be your better fishing lakes.
yeah. I can't remember the name of the other lake. I was out there one time, rented a Harley, and we rode around the valley, and then we rode out to a reservoir kind of east in Maricopa County. I can't remember. It's got like a marina.
Yeah, that could probably be Saguaro Lake, or it
Yep,
could be,
that
yeah,
was it. Yep, we rode there, then rode back. That was the most beautiful ride I've probably ever done on a Harley.
yeah.
And yeah, that was awesome. I've ridden almost everywhere in Florida except the Panhandle, but that was amazing. So you got Lake Havasu, which I think you spend quite a bit of time in. That's kind of from what I understand, kind of like a party town, isn't it?
Yeah, so Lake Havasu, my family has a place there. I have spent lots and lots of time there, and it is definitely a fun place to go and visit if you're of age to go out and have fun. I know I have had my fair share of fun there as well. But it's not even really the party scene. It's the boat scene there. I
Okay.
mean, that's probably one of the biggest powerboat central areas, probably in the Southwest.
Well, no, what kind of boats are they running out there? Like cigarette boats or
So Havasu is more of they're a dual hull, what do they call that? A party deck style boat.
like a catamaran or? Like a deck
Uh,
boat?
not, yeah, they're more like a deck boat. Yeah.
Okay. The
So they're like
pontoon
a
boats
really
out there?
cool Yeah, they're like a cool pontoon, but they go really fast.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. And then as far as the fishing out there, is there any fishing or is it just more of a sightseeing, like kind of like a party, sandbar Sunday type vibe?
I mean, I see lots of people going out there and fishing. They have their kayaks along the banks and everything, and I'm sure I know there's tons of bass in that lake. I mean, other than that, I don't really know what you'd want to catch out there that's worth your time eating.
Now that butts up to California, right?
Yeah,
Is there
so the lake is the divider between Arizona and California.
okay.
So I
And
believe Arizona owns exactly halfway into that lake, and then California owns exactly halfway in the lake.
and then what is it about the bridge? There's a bridge that they disassembled in England and then took
Yeah.
to Havasu or
Yeah, so it's the original London Bridge from London.
huh.
They
Did-
dismantled it brick by brick, labeled it, put it on barges, shipped it here, and then reassembled it where it currently stands.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
the
a
original London Bridge.
random place for it to end up at.
Middle of the desert, man. I don't know.
So what about let's talk about some of your hunting, then we'll go back into the ranch life. But as far as any of the game you got or what kind of equipment, what kind of gear were you using to hunt?
Yeah, so here in Arizona, for hunting here, I like to wear Flectarn. It's a pretty descriptive pattern that kind of fits the area here. We have a lot of tans, a lot of browns, a lot of green. Um, the only thing that's missing is that little bit of red, but for the most part, I think Flectarn is a pretty good pattern to have up here in northern Arizona. Um, Other than that, I just use a regular Remington 700 BDL and 7 millimeter, and then I just have a Burris scope on top of that, and
Hmm.
that's kind of what I use.
What about boots? Are you climbing over any rocks? Do you need above the ankle
So
support or
boots, yeah, I guess it would also depend on what, because elk is between rifle, excuse me, like the end of November to kind of middle December
okay.
for the certain areas here. Archery is going to be way earlier in the season, September, October. Um, but it depends how kind of early our winter will start up here. If our winter starts middle of November, I'd recommend wearing, above the ankle boots. For me, doesn't matter if it's sunny or if it's kind of, rainy, snowy. I always wear my Red Wing loggers.
Okay.
I'm pretty tried and true to the Red Wing boot. I know other people are going to have their preference, but that's just what I choose for put them. If it's wintertime, they breathe when it's hot. They keep my feet dry. So to me, they're a good boot. They're comfortable. They have the arch sport. Um, Probably when I go out every day, I probably walk 6, 7 miles, just kind of hiking around, checking for sign, looking for beds, seeing what's nibbled on, where they're trying to, move. That's just kind of what I do. Everybody's kind of different.
And then what kind of stuff did you run out in Washington State? Same rifle, almost same gear.
So
Mm,
when I was up there, I think I went hunting with my dad one time. And I didn't have a tag. I wasn't old enough to hunt. I didn't take hunter's ed yet. But he used the same firearm that I did.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we had to do the hunter safety course. I can't remember. I was driving. I don't know when you're supposed to take it, but I took it when I was like 16, 17. But we never really hunted for mammals here. I mean, we had everything in our backyard: turkeys, hogs, deer. I've seen panthers in our backyard. But we really just only hunted public land. So we kind of went after birds, duck, snipe, things like that, which I love snipe. I mean, I'd have to go back in my memory bank, but if you were to look up the term sniper, I want to say it has something to do with English hunters going to maybe India and then hunting for snipe, because when they take off, they have a real distinct screech. And if you miss that screech, your odds of actually getting it is pretty low, because they take off and they just dart left, right, gone. So you got to hear that screech. So half the time we were running with just one earplug in hunting, and that probably led to some of my tinnitus that I have. But yeah, I never bagged a deer, shot a hog, but I do want to do some hunting out in Utah, which you and I talked about that some. You were telling me to go with the Remington 700, or sorry, 7mm versus a 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
So I'll probably take you up on that.
I know. I definitely the 7mm. It's got plenty of ass behind it to put down whatever you're shooting it at. Especially if you get the right grain weight bullet, it's gonna put down anything. Elk. That's pretty much the only kind of big game. I've never really heard of people putting down like a moose with it. I'm sure it's been done, but I've personally never heard of that before. Your 300 Win Mags and bigger calibers like that are what you're going to be hunting moose with. Meese, I think. A flock of meese. But one
Yeah,
of
I
my
don't know what the
things,
plural of moose is. Mooses?
I think moose is already is plural,
Yeah.
but I want to say that it's actually called like a flock of moose. It's really weird.
Yeah, there's a bunch of weird terms. What's the
We
what's the
got
term they
a
use for,
gander of geese,
yeah, and then
a murder of crows.
yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. Murder. Like, where did they come up with these terms? A school of fish.
Yeah, school of fish. They're not going to learn, man.
Yeah, and if there's 100 of the same fish, it's fish, that's plural. But if
Yeah,
there's two different species, or three different species, four different species, that's fishes.
yeah. I
I don't know. English language is pretty weird.
I hate it. I got like a B in English. I don't even know.
I do have to thank one of my English professors for actually straightening me out for English. So yeah, maybe I'll have him on the podcast one day, because he likes to
Hey, there you
fish.
go.
I think we really just ended up talking about fishing more than anything else.
Yeah, see what you need to do is say, hey, look, I brought my friend on the podcast. We were talking about, what do you call groups of animals? And we kind of like started talking, and then we went in a weird tangent. And then we talked about how messed up the English language is.
Yeah, which it's pretty easy to go down a weird tangent on podcasts. So maybe
Really
we'll
is.
probably end up there. I mean, I haven't been suicided yet, which I'll go
Yeah.
on the record saying I'll never commit suicide. I don't do drugs. My old ticker's running fine. So I got to thinking about that the other day. They have the heart attack gun. I'm like, who they use that on?
Well, it's weird that you talk about the heart attack. Because right before we hopped on this podcast, I was watching that Dr. Phil episode where like he has a bunch of like the big obese women on, and he goes, you know, the bigger you are, the more susceptible you are to having a heart attack. And then the lady combats him with, well, bigger obese people are more likely to survive a heart attack. Which at that time I went, hold on, time out. Time out. I gotta look this up. I looked it up, and there was a study that was done. I'm gonna give her a C for that, because she's
Okay.
kind of true. The study I ran through had a bunch of flaws in it. It took into account BMI. BMI is not necessarily true for everybody. Look at some of these UFC fighters that are walking around. They're 5'8", but they're like 180 pounds of just nothing but cut muscle.
Yeah.
According to the BMI, they're going to be considered obese, and it's not true.
Yeah.
Another thing the study didn't take into account for was like caloric intake, foods that were being eaten. Were they healthy? Were they non-healthy? There was just a lot of different things that weren't being taken into account. But a big relying factor on this thing was BMI.
Yeah.
And I know, especially nowadays, BMI is becoming like a big no-no thing. You're not really supposed to talk about it.
Well, yeah, it's yeah, going. I mean, they did admit it that they do have the heart attack gun. So it's kind of weird when people, oh, they had a heart attack. But it shoots what the heart attack gun is. Do you know anything about it? Do you ever read into that?
No, I've never heard about that.
So if you could just Google heart attack gun, and it'll show you. I can't remember if it's built on a 1911 platform or if it's CO2 or not, but essentially it has a shellfish venom inside of a microscopic pointed ice dart. So the projectile is actually a little itty bitty piece of ice with the shellfish venom in there. They can send it out. Shellfish venom goes into the bloodstream, causes cardiac arrest. So you could Google that. I want to say they came out and admitted it in like 1975.
Is this the like pufferfish venom? Because doesn't the pufferfish venom do the same thing?
I think maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But my thing is, if they have that, I don't want to give them ideas, but they've probably thought of it. With all the fentanyl out in the street and like people overdosing on fentanyl, if you have someone that's like right on the line of like borderline drug use, like a notable figure that's used drugs before, what if instead of putting the shellfish, poison in there, if they put a little bit of fentanyl? Because like if you were to look at a penny and look at the year on the penny, like if you were to cover that up with fentanyl, like some of that, the year would actually still be showing. And that's like a lethal dose of fentanyl. So you could easily put that in a little dart of ice. They hit you with the ice, goes in, and it literally looks like a bug bite. And little red dot, it goes in, it dissolves and goes away. There's no evidence of that. And then the fentanyl or the shellfish, whatever poison just goes into your bloodstream, either causes cardiac arrest or you could overdose. Like,
We'll see. I think it's like 0.2 milligrams or something like that. A fentanyl is a lethal dose.
yeah.
It's something insane.
Yeah, very. And I don't know if it's milligrams or micrograms. I don't study metric, so I don't know.
This is America.
It's very, very, a very, very small amount would cause
Yes.
an overdose.
Yeah, it's a very small amount. I know that, and it's very lethal. Yeah, it's actually, living in a border state, it's actually a pretty big thing that we're seeing down here. Just the amount of fentanyl coming across and what it's actually doing to people down here.
Yeah, and I want to say they're even like, let's say you go buy Adderall or something secondhand and they bought it from someone else, it could have, there's a very good chance it has fentanyl in it.
Yeah.
So
it's a real thing, man. It's scary. It's honestly scary because it's like, what else could it possibly be in? Could it be in something I'll buy from the grocery store? Could it, worker gets pissed off and just starts pouring a bunch of fentanyl or whatever into stuff?
yeah.
There was that weird lady that was tampering with Tylenol back in like the 80s or whatever, or 90s.
Yep.
That's why you have like safety seals on everything now. It's weird.
Yeah, we live in a real world. So that's why I'll stick to beer. I don't do drugs.
No drogas.
Which I might have to go down get some more pretty soon. Had to break out the koozie, keep the beer warm from getting warm.
Oh, dude! So I just bought a Yeti cup.
Oh yeah, is that your first one? Did you pop
finally
your cherry?
I finally broke. I broke down and I finally bought a Yeti cup.
Spent $75. No, I'm kidding.
It was like $40, but I finally broke down and got one. And I made a drink last night at probably like 5.
Yeah.
We're kind of like right before I was going to eat dinner. Forgot that it was in there and it was sitting on my nightstand. Woke up, went about my whole day, worked and everything, came home. This was like probably 4:30. I was like, I'm going to go dump that out and put some water in it. It was still full of ice, man.
Yeah.
Still full of ice. I was impressed.
They are pretty good. I'll have to send you one of the Fish Like Hell tumblers and you can do a side-by-side comparison, see how it stacks up.
I'm always down for redneck science.
Speaking of redneck science, now we're going off the tangent, but there was, you're in northern Arizona, and I was watching Skinwalker Ranch last night, believe it or not. I've never watched it before.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know what is up with our direct TV. I'll turn it on and it'll be just on the most random channel ever. And I saw this. I'm like, all right, well, I guess we'll watch that, because I've seen like the clips of it. I've heard about skywalkers or skinwalkers or skin crawlers or whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, Zach's gonna be on the podcast soon. I should watch this and see. Do you have skinwalkers on your ranch?
Okay. So there is one basic rule about skinwalkers. The more you talk about them, the more you're inviting them in.
Okay.
And because I live in the woods and I live near the Navajo reservation, we should probably not be talking about this, but I will for the sake of just talking about it. So, I mean, I've heard stories, so skinwalkers, long and short, are supposed to be shapeshifters.
Like
They kill
people
people.
or aliens?
So I guess the original telling was people would sell their souls to, the demons and the devils within the Indian culture and their religion,
Okay.
and they were promised immortality. So what they would do was they would kill people. I think another thing was they had to sacrifice their family for this. So basically, they had to sacrifice their, spouse, kids, whatever. They had to sacrifice their family for this. Um, and I know people could be out there listening to this and going, "Nah, he's wrong." But this is just what I know from people that I've talked to about it. So, anyways, anything that they kill from then on out, they can take the shape of. So I mean, I've heard stories of people driving on the Navajo reservation. There's this one story in particular that I heard from one of my buddies who is a Navajo. He was saying that there was a guy driving home, or a woman, I can't remember, hit a dog on the roadway, drove past, stopped, got out of the car to go look for the dog. Dog wasn't there, no blood, nothing. Guy started freaking out, quickly got back to the car, started driving away, and in the red taillights, he could see a figure get up and start running after the car. So he just hightailed it out of there. And I mean, that's kind of the most interesting story that I've personally heard about skinwalkers from kind of down here. I personally don't believe in it, but to each their own. I believe in aliens, and I believe we didn't go to the moon. So I mean, people could think I'm nuts. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm out on actually seeing it. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but I do know that I don't want to be the first one to actually see it or see it for real. So
Yes,
I'm out on that. But
that's me too.
I was watching the show, and I'm like, wait. And I had to go way, way, way back in the old memory bank. I'm like, that guy, I can't remember his name, if it's Travis or I can't remember, but I remember him from the show Rocket City Rednecks. Did you ever see that? Like
No,
10
I
years
never seen
ago?
this show.
I'm like, wait, that's the dude from Rocket City Rednecks. And then I saw another guy. I'm like, wait, he was on that other show that was canceled or something like that. And I'm watching the show. I'm like, this is very inconvincing. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna keep watching this, because pretty, it's pretty corny. But I do know I don't want to see anything.
That's my thing, man. Especially the stuff you're seeing in Vegas right now with this whole UFO landing and
I know, I saw that.
weird, man. That's all I'm saying. We don't have to go on a tangent on this, but it's just weird.
Well, we're
You
already
know,
there, so we might as well. You said you believe in aliens and you don't believe in the moon landing, so I guess this is where we're going. We're merging on the interstate now.
I mean, man, I really don't. I think aliens could be a real thing. Um, you know, there's all this footage coming out. You got these guys in Vegas. I just called and said I'm not BSing. There's 8 to 10 foot creatures going on in my backyard, and caused body cam recorded freaking something falling out of the sky. It's just weird stuff, man. And I don't like to think that coincidences are a thing, but it's all just kind of starting to seem to fall into place.
Now I do. So this will be a long tangent. So break it up for me if I go too long. Now the body cam footage, I did see that. That could be a comet or a big shooting star or something. I think it was actually there because I've seen plenty of shooting stars. And I swear I've seen shooting stars land. They might have burned up before they actually hit the ground, but I swear I've seen them come as close as almost possible
Yeah.
and land like a few hundred yards away. But I don't believe in aliens, but I've seen two or three things that I can't explain. So that flash that you saw in the video from the cop's camera, that was a big blue or green color. That was pretty close. But there was
Mhm.
one night I was working, it was probably like 2 a.m. on shift, and I saw this giant ball of fire. I'm like, oh, that's a shooting star. And then I turned around and I just happened to glance back. I'm like, oh, it's still burning. Whatever it was just a slow moving ball of fire. I'm like, oh, I would record that, but it's probably going to go out by the time I get my phone out. But it didn't. I'm like, okay, well, now I'll record it. And I'm recording it, and I don't know what it could have been, because if it was a comet, it would have passed. If it was a shooting star, it would have passed, but it kept going and going and going. And I watched it for well over 45 seconds or more. And it looked like maybe an airplane with an engine on fire, but then I didn't see the navigation lights or what. I'm like, what the heck is it? To this day, I don't know what it was. Couldn't tell you what it was. Just a giant ball of slow moving fire. I'm like, what is that? And then
Yeah.
another time I saw a light, some sort of craft. And I'm like, oh, what is that? That's not, because we kind of live close to an airport when I was growing up. And I look up and I see a light. I'm like, that's not on approach for the airport. That's not departing. So I like walk around a big oak tree. And by the time I made it around the oak tree, it was completely gone.
Yeah.
So, and it was too high for the Cessnas and little planes that flew into the regional airport. And I'm like, what was that? So I would say I would believe in the multiverse theory before I believed in aliens, but
I don't
also
know, man.
define alien too. I mean, if we're talking about a bacteria
Right.
on Titan, you could technically consider that an alien life form.
I mean, I guess alien, I'm not really even counting like, your typical 8-10 foot creature that's super skinny, has a big head, it could look like anything. Hell, it could freaking look like a human. I mean, you never know, but um there's just too much stuff going on. The universe is too big. There's so much we haven't explored, you know. I don't know. All I'm saying is maybe the possibilities out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, they could be in the bottom of the ocean and we wouldn't know. I mean, we've been to space more than the bottom of the ocean. And
Yeah.
Alex and I were talking about the sub that's gone missing. They're still out there looking for. So I don't know. We've been
Well,
to space
they're
more
not
than,
looking they're not looking for it anymore.
well, I didn't hear. Did something happen recently or?
We didn't hear that it like imploded on itself.
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh man, yeah. So like when was it, like only like an hour and a half after it like took off, right? They lost
Yeah.
communication. Yeah, right then and there, it just imploded.
Huh. Oh,
And
that
they
ain't
were saying
cool.
that the pressure of it collapsing
Mm-hmm.
and then the heat that was generated from it collapsing with the oxygen and
Mm-hmm.
exploding
Mm-hmm.
was within like a millisecond. It was like boom, and it was just over. And
Oh,
I
I
guess
can imagine.
I guess the people were just kind of like save the images for people to kind of make them themselves of what that would look like on a human body. I mean, let alone 5 people. But I'm sure it crushed to like the size of maybe, I mean, nobody really has a real estimate, but I'm going to say it was only like 25 feet long. It probably crushed that thing to maybe like the size of a mattress.
Yeah, especially did it say what depth they were at?
Well, an hour and a half. They were saying they probably would have been not far from the Titanic wreckage.
Hmm. So probably 100, 200 atmosphere, something like that.
Yeah, they probably would have been between the 200-300 atmosphere range.
Yeah, that would be instantaneous, just nothing. I mean, probably if I were to guess, 100,000 psi per square foot, something like that. I don't know.
Uh,
That's some rough math in my head. I'm not a mathematician.
I think the guy said that it would have been like around. I can't remember. I did the math on it too. It was absolutely absurd. Um, but they were saying that it was like a millisecond. The thing would have crushed. Everybody would have died within like less than a millisecond or a millisecond.
Hmm.
Um, but what was interesting to like here, I heard like a neuroscientist talking about this, and he was saying, I think he said pain travels from wherever the pain happens to the brain to register.
Hmm.
I think he said it's within like 30 to 50 milliseconds, and your eyes take in everything that your brain registers at about 13 milliseconds. So he said they would have never known visually or felt it when it happened,
Yeah.
which I guess is nice to know that these people didn't suffer down there.
Yeah, it would have been here 1 minute, gone the next millisecond. So I guess that's
Yeah,
one
it
way
would
to
have
go.
been, you're alive and then black.
Yeah.
It would just been it would have been like the end of the Sopranos. Really, it would have been just just like looking, seeing, visualizing, and then black. You know,
Mm. Now I gotta watch The Sopranos.
very good show, man. Very good show. I've been saying it for years.
Yeah, so I don't know, the alien thing. I did see some footage. Now I did see some footage of like a creature in like the bushes, but then I heard not too long after that that was not the same incident. But allegedly, I want to say it was like a Latino family that had the aliens in the back,
Yeah,
and then they like were recording it on like TikTok or something. But then I'm like watching the video and I'm like looking at it and I'm like, I don't see anything in there. So I didn't see any aliens. All I saw was a flash, which could be a lot of things, especially out there. I mean, there's been confirmed pilots that, will be in a B-52 or some sort of aircraft. They'll throw it into idle and go over a campfire in the middle of the desert,
yeah,
pull the stick back and kick on the afterburners and boom, UFO sighting.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know, but what else you got going on at the ranch?
Man,
What's
nothing
your
really
day-to-day
going
like?
on. Day to day is just going to work, going home. I wish I could go into more depth about what I do actually, but
Yeah, I mean, do you have cattle, horses? You got fields
well,
to mow with a
we got
tractor?
horses up here right now.
Okay, very
So
nice.
horses, pretty much it. No cattle.
Okay, what about just kind of just doing maintenance here and there? I mean, I imagine on property that size, you probably always got something you got to tinker on.
Yeah, R&M on equipment, tools, all that kind of stuff does take a little bit of time. Um,
And we see that you're a Milwaukee fanboy, it looks like.
very, very much. I love my Milwaukee tools. It doesn't even say it at the bottom, but it's supposed to say fuel right here. You got to buy Milwaukee fuel.
Yeah. I don't know. My favorite color is like chartreuse, so I just buy Ryubi stuff because it's my favorite color. So that's what I go with.
Like highlighter neon green.
Yeah, it's my favorite color, so that's what I go with.
Nah, man. If it ain't, if red, strong, masculine. So are Milwaukee tools.
Yeah, if things don't work out on the ranch, I guess you could go work for them.
I'm gonna work for them. Yeah, I guess. And Milwaukee sponsor me.
Yeah, I see you got another tool behind you on the old workbench there. What you got going on there?
So that's the gun I just got back from Sig Sauer. I had to send it back in for some warranty work.
Oh, you don't say. How's your customer service experience there?
It actually wasn't that bad. Contacted him, told him what the problem was. The guy was kind of a little rude on the phone, acting like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
When I have the gun in my hand, telling him, yeah, bolts hanging up, doesn't feel like it's going into battery. Oh, an AR-15 can't do that. What? I don't know, man. Better than that, he sent me the packing slip, mailed the gun off, got it back. They polished the chamber, the bore, the barrel, polished the inside of the bolt carrier group. Thing works like a champ now, having no problem, fully going into battery.
How
No
was it
more.
when you would now was it when you would, try to chamber around, it wouldn't go into battery all the way, or was it just when you're
Yeah,
manipulating
so
it up?
I could have the bolt fully in the rear, pop a mag in. I could either drop the bolt carrier release on the side of the gun or manually charge it. And it would, I don't know, probably one out of every two out of every 10 wouldn't fully seat the round in the chamber and it wouldn't fully go into battery.
Hmm.
Um, Now they claim that as a user error. This is not the first gun that I have ever owned in my life, so I'm not an idiot. So I know that that is not a problem that a normal AR platform rifle would have. Um, that is something within the bolt carrier group that's causing it. That's causing that cam lug not to fully move over to lock into the chamber. When I took the whole bolt carrier group apart, I took the gas rings out from inside of the bolt carrier group, reassembled the whole bolt, and everything was moving just fine. Put the gas rings back in, put it all back together. I was having a hang up. So it was either the gas rings were, mismachined and either machined too big, or the inside of the bolt carrier group fully wasn't polished and cleaned out properly. Well, they did all that back at Sig Sauer, sent it back to me, test fired it. I got it back. I haven't put any live rounds through it, but I loaded 5 in a magazine and sat there just over and over, making sure that it would fully go into battery and eject every time. Seems to be working fine now.
Hmm. Interesting. So a little bit of QC issues they got going on there.
Yeah, if it doesn't work on their consumers, they'll just make it up in the next edition and then send it.
or recoup their losses with another military contract.
Yeah, or that too. I mean, I just heard Canada made the M17 their pistol of choice. So
Yeah, I can't remember what I think they're calling it the C-22 or something like that.
something stupid. Yeah.
I can't believe they still had, which I didn't look into it, but I saw they were still carrying the Browning. I'm like, wow, those were issued in the mid 40s. They're still rocking those. I mean, I guess different units, but
I mean, it's Canada.
yeah.
And they're probably too afraid to just shoot it. They probably just throw them at people.
Yeah, something along those lines. But does that say have a forward assist on it, or I don't know anything.
It does have a failure button.
Yeah, I
So
don't
I would have to use that to get the bolt to go into battery.
yeah, we talked about this in the last podcast. I don't know if I said, yeah, I got rid of all my striker fired SIGs, all the new SIGs. I'm staying away from. I'm just not a fan of the striker fired platform that they have. I don't really feel it's as reliable of a engineering, from an engineering standpoint. I'll stick with my Glocks, but I can't say anything bad about the hammer fired double action, single actions. Like I said, I carried one at work, and yeah, those are good. But striker fired, got rid of them. Now I do have one customer service. I forgot about this. I did have one customer service phone call to them. I had the 365 XL. I wanted to put a red dot on, and the Allen screws that they used were just like, it felt like tin metal. When I put the Allen wrench on it, I just gave it the little bit, just a little bit of torque to loosen it up, stripped right out. So I actually bought another slide, and then same thing. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna call. So I sent the slide off to them. They took it off and then sent it back to me, and then I mounted the red dot on. Then I got rid of that.
I mean, yeah, but it's like any polymer framed gun. Give it, give it a while, trial and error. The more rounds you put through it, the weaker and fragile that polymer, frame is going to be. Heat, everything, wear and tear.
Which is another thing about the SIGs. I think we've been seeing more of that with the SIGs than anything else. I don't know if you've seen that on social media or not.
I've seen a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the FCU design. I don't think that's a good design. So I'm wondering if that's, my only theory would be, if that fire control unit is getting hot and how it's dispersing the heat, if that is what's causing premature cracks or not, because it's one solid Glock. I mean, if you look at a Glock, the rails are independent of the trigger system and things like that. So I don't know, that's all one solid piece of metal. So I don't know if that's what's causing it, but I've taken it apart. I've looked at it. I'm like, I don't think I'll trust my life to this design.
Yeah.
That's just me. And
I mean, I
now,
don't know. I mean, I carry a SIG 365 every single day. And if it doesn't work, I'll just throw it at somebody. It'll give me enough time to turn and run away and get the Glock out of my truck.
now what's your Skinwalker carry piece out there when you're working on the ranch? You carry anything?
So bullets cannot affect a skinwalker.
Really?
The only thing effective to a skinwalker is white sage.
White sage. What if you dip your bullets in like a white sage liquid?
So I've talked about doing like a shotgun shell that
Yeah.
has like white sage in it.
Mhm.
So I've talked about doing that, but I don't know how that would, be effective against a skinwalker.
Huh. What about like a wood spike, like a vampire or something?
I don't think that would work either, man. Because I don't know, man. Because it's like a wooden spike is only effective for vampires. What's the other thing? Garlic. Doesn't garlic also do vampires?
Yeah, light, daylight,
And
something like
then like
that.
a silver bullets for werewolves.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know I
That
don't
was
want
kind
to
of
see any of that.
Yeah. So like the silver bullet philosophy was kind of how I came up with like the white sage shotgun shell. Was because I was going, well, silver bullet kills a werewolf. What if I just put white sage in a shotgun shell?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. Well, it's great having you on. Great talking about your life out west. I am jealous. I wish I could be out there.
Well, you're more
Uh,
than welcome to come out and visit. We'll shoot stuff. Go out in the side by side. Go out and goof around.
Sounds good. Sounds good. You got any good bars around there? I have to re-up here pretty soon.
Yeah, there's some pretty decent bars. There's a new kind of bar and grill that opened up down the road. It
Very
was pretty
nice.
nice. We were gonna go when Alex was out here, but it was closed. Actually, it was weird.
Hmm.
But now it's open. It's got a full-time schedule, so I kind of go down and hang out there.
I will have to take you up on that. Well, Mr. Tamburello, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, giving us a little bit of insight into the hunting and life out west. And everyone else, I hope you have tight lines. And remember, fish like hell.